we know that William Barr doesn't plan to address the Mueller report on his own, but will he be able to actually avoid any of these questions from lawmakers, do you think?
No, he won't be able to avoid them. And his appropriations request, one of the priorities is additional money to aid in election interference problems. So that is squarely on topic with the report, the non-conspiracy portion of the report. So I think that's going to be difficult for him to evade, although he does have scheduled May 1st and May 2nd hearings specifically on the report. So he could say, listen, I'll be better prepared. I'm here to talk about appropriations. Come back to me on May 1st and May 2nd. But I think he won't be able to completely avoid discussion of the report, of his summary of the report.
You know, it's so interesting, Kim. When the 4-page summary was released, the president and his supporters came out very strongly and said no obstruction, no collusion, based off of the 4-page summary that the Attorney General provided. In the last couple of days, the president's been very vocal on Twitter about the leaks that have happened surrounding the actual report from the special counsel. And there were reports last week that some lawyers on Robert Mueller's team did not agree with Barr's summary of their findings. How much has that spurred Democrats to aggressively challenge Barr and, I guess, pursue the full report?
You know, it's kind of like a summary of a tome like Moby Dick or War and Peace. We all know if you read a 4-page summary of a giant novel, it doesn't give you much of a sense of what's actually in that document.
I tried to do that in college, but I did not.
What were your grades like?
Very bad. Yeah. When I tried to summarize War and Peace in a 4-page report, I got in trouble.
Oh, yeah. So the paper didn't do so well. So I think Mr. Barr took a risk in giving that kind of a summary. I think it's inevitable that there's going to be additional information. And of course, even in his summary, he indicated that there is for sure information suggesting that Mr. Trump obstructed justice. That is there. That's going to presumably come out at some point, and it's not going to be helpful to the White House. In addition, of course, we don't know the facts and details underlying the headliner with respect to conspiracy and the 2016 election. We do know the Russians interfered. So optimally, the commander-in-chief would be very concerned about that attack by an adverse foreign nation on our electoral process. I think that's something all people, both Republicans and Democrats, should rally behind and be concerned about.
You know, Kim, you mentioned that he's probably not going to be able to avoid questions, but, you know, he could definitely sort of put them off. If he's asked specific questions about the Mueller report, I'm sure he could say, well, you know, a redacted version is coming out in just a few weeks. Just wait a minute. But there are some things that have happened in the past couple weeks that a lot of people have questioned. Like you mentioned, 48 hours to figure out a way to
summarize a 2-year.
Exactly. And also, you know, some of the reporting has to do with the fact that some of Mueller's investigators have said, according to the reports, that they gave summaries that would have been fine, that would not have to be redacted, and they weren't released. Can you presume that some of the questions today will be around those two issues?
I think the questions will be, why did you do it this way? Mm-hmm. That is, why did you give such a tiny piece and summary conclusions of what was a 2-year investigation on a very complicated matter and leave America kind of hanging for the next phase of things? That's a very anxious position, I think, for Americans to be in. And I think the other question will be, why did you sort of step into Mr. Mueller's shoes and make a call on obstruction in a relatively clipped matter? I mean, the reason that Rod Rosenstein appointed Mr. Mueller was to take that entire process out of the chain of command of the President of the United States. So arguably for the Attorney General, handpicked by the President, to then step in at the 11th hour and make a decision on behalf of Mr. Mueller undermines the whole point of having an independent special prosecutor. And I think given that the Department of Justice will not prosecute a president, this has to be vetted in the political process. It has to be vetted in the Congress, whether by Democrats or Republicans, in order for us to have an accountable system of government where there's no one in office that goes without some kind of scrutiny and accountability. For the presidency in 2019, it has to be through the political process.
Mm-hmm. You know, Mr. Barr, the Attorney General, has been around D.C. for a very long time. He knows many of these lawmakers. I know that there's going to be breathless coverage of his testimony, but he's very good and adept at avoiding questions if he wants to. So I don't expect much from him. But As you know, Democrats on the Judiciary Committee voted last week to authorize a subpoena for the full Mueller report. So what could that legal fight look like over how much information is released?
I expect that what we will see in the coming week or so in a redacted version is many paragraphs, if not pages, that are blacked out. Mr. Barr has indicated there are several kinds of information that he's going to take out, including grand jury information. That kind of thing can be overridden by a court. So if this goes to a judge, we might see grand jury information. We did get, as the American public, grand jury details in the Whitewater investigation. We got grand jury details in the Watergate investigation. So I think that category of information we might see. Number two has to do with national security information. That will stay behind closed doors, I think, for the short term. The third piece has to do with whether the report bears on other investigations. And I think there are a lot of unanswered questions, particularly about Russia. The only thing Mr. Barr said in his summary was that there was no conspiracy with respect to hacking into the DNC emails and the sort of social media distortion campaign. But of course, there are a lot of other questions about Russia, including why, for example, did the president publicly lie about negotiations with the Russians on a Trump Tower, Moscow, during the campaign. So I think that question still remains. Is that in the report, or will that go to another part of the Justice Department? And then the last piece they've indicated, Rod Rosenstein as well, is that if there's innocent third-party private information, that could be redacted. But in addition to the grand jury information, I think that might become public after a court battle. Remember the Monica Lewinsky sex scandal. She was in her 20s. She was never indicted, but there was quite a bit of embarrassing and highly personal information about her that was made public in the Whitewater final report to Congress.
Lots of questions there. Kim Wehle, thank you as always. We appreciate it.
Sure.